Hello, my name is Melissa Romore, and I am from Elkhorn, Nebraska, USA. I am reading chapter 33 from my personal copy of Jane of Lantern Hill, which I've had since I was a young girl. The cover has become detached from the actual story, but it all works. So, chapter 33. It was the last week in May that Jane saw the house. Mother had gone one evening to visit a friend who had just moved into a new house in the new lakeside development on the banks of the Humber. She took Jane with her, and it was a revelation to Jane, whose only goings and comings had been so circumscribed that she had never dreamed there were such lovely places in Toronto. Why, it was just like a pretty country village out here. Hills and ravines with ferns and wild columbines growing in them, and rivers and trees. The green fire of willows, the great clouds of oaks, the plumes of pines, and, not far away, the blue mist that was Lake Ontario. Mrs. Townley lived on a street called Lakeside Gardens, and she showed them proudly over her new house. It was so big and splendid that Jane did not feel very much interested in it, and after a while she slipped away in the dusk to explore the street itself, leaving Mother and Mrs. Townley talking cupboards and bathrooms. Jane decided that she liked Lakeside Gardens. She liked it because it twisted and curved. It was a friendly street. The houses did not look at each other with their noses in the air. Even the big ones were not snooty. They sat among their gardens with spireas of foam around them, tulips and daffodils all about their toes, and said, "We have lots of room. We don't have to push with our elbows. We can afford to be gracious." Jane looked them over carefully as she went by, but it was not until she was nearly at the end of the street, where it turned into a road winding down to the lake, that she saw her house. She had liked a great many of the houses she had passed, but when she saw this house, she knew at first sight that it belonged to her, just as Lantern Hill did. It was a small house for Lakeside Gardens, but a great deal bigger than Lantern Hill. It was built of gray stone and had casement windows, some of them beautifully unexpected, and a roof of shingles stained a very dark brown. It was built right on the edge of the ravine overlooking the treetops, with 5 great pines just behind it. "What a darling place," breathed Jane. It was a new house. It had just been built, and there was a "for sale" sign on the lawn. Jane went all around it and peered through every diamond-paned window. There was a living room that would really live when it was furnished, a dining room with a door that opened into a sunroom, and the most delightful breakfast nook in pale yellow, with built-in china closets. It should have chairs and table of yellow too, and curtains at the recessed windows between gold and green that would look like sunshine on the darkest day. Yes, this house belonged to her. She could see herself in it, hanging curtains, polishing the glass doors, making cookies in the kitchen. She hated the "for sale" sign. To think that somebody would be buying that house, her house, was torture. She prowled round and round it. At the back, the ground was terraced right down to the floor of the ravine. There was a rock garden and a group of forsythia bushes that must have been fountains of pale gold in early spring. 3 flights of stone steps went down the terraces, with the delicacy of birch shadows about them, and off to one side was a wild garden of slender young Lombardies. A robin winked at her. A nice chubby cat came over from the neighboring rock garden. Jane tried to catch him, but, "Excuse me, this is my busy day," said the cat, and pattered down the stone steps. Jane finally sat down on the front steps and gave herself up to a secret joy. There was a gap in the trees on the opposite side of the street through which a far purple-gray hill showed. There were misty, pale green woods over the river. The woods all around Lantern Hill would be misty green too. The banners of a city of night were being flaunted in the sunset sky behind the pines further down. The gulls soared whitely up the river. It grew darker. Lights bloomed out in the houses. Jane always felt the fascination of lighted houses in the night. There should be a light in the house behind her. She should be turning on the lights in it. She should be living here. She could be happy here. She could be friends with the wind and the rain here. She could love the lake even if it did not have the sparkle and boom of Gulf seas. She could put out nuts for the saucy squirrels and hang up birdhouses for the feathered folk and feed the pheasants Mrs. Townley said lived in the ravine. Suddenly, there was a slim, golden new moon over the oaks, and the world was still. Almost as still as Queen's Shore on a calm summer night, and there was a sparkling of lights along the Lake Drive, rather, like a necklace of gems on some dark beauty's breast. "Where were you all the evening, darling?" asked Mother as they drove home. "Picking out a house to buy," said Jane dreamily. "I wish we lived here instead of at 60 Gay, Mummy." Mother was silent for a moment. "You don't like 60 Gay very well, do you, dearest?" "No," said Jane, and then to her own amazement added, "Do you?" She was still more amazed when Mother said, quickly and vehemently, "I hate it." That night Jane ticked off May. Only 10 days more. It was days now where it had been weeks. Oh, suppose she took ill and couldn't go. But no, God couldn't. That is the end of chapter 33. Thanks for joining me.